Hi everyone, how are you? So today's topic is what is the difference between a psychologist and a coach? And the reason that I thought it might be a good idea to talk about it was because it's been asked of me a little bit more regularly of late, to define the difference. And to be entirely honest with you, this video that you're about to watch is really focused on my experience. I think that it would probably be a very good idea for me to write an actual post about it so that I can draw up for you some ways that they're similar and different. But what I've done now, because I'm just about to go home, so what I've done now is I've kind of made up a little bit of a rubric for myself, and I thought it might be interesting to talk to you about the difference between a psychologist and a coach from the client perspective, and also the difference between a psychologist and a coach from the practitioner perspective. So I think, first of all, as a client, what you can expect when you go and see a psychologist is that the psychologist is going to do a range of things. The first appointment, or two or three sometimes, are really around getting a history from you, a family history, a social history, a medication history. There's assessment that's involved in order to diagnose a problem. It's talked about then as a condition, so a mental health condition from that point on. And then there's treatment, and treatment is really prescriptive. Actually, it's evidence-based most of the time, because a lot of the clients that come to the practice, and some psychologists call them patients, but I call them clients, they come to the practice under different funding models. So the type of approach that the psychologist needs to use is determined by the model of funding that the client's presenting under, whether that's Medicare, whether that's work cover, doesn't matter. They've all got their own way that they want the psychologist to work with you. The only time I think that you, as a client, can see a psychologist and get any type of treatment that your heart desires is if you're paying for it by yourself and you're not getting any reimbursements or rebates or out of pocket money coming back to you. So that's kind of the client experience. It tends to be quite limited in Australia anyway. Most people will come, around 10 sessions, because that's the Medicare rebate that they can get. And then after that, they kind of say, well, I'll wait until next year when they can start again. Or they're limited by rebates available under private health insurance if they have private health, or they're limited under funding approvals by other organisations like WorkCover and TAC, EAP, and so forth. So it's quite restricted in terms of the number of sessions that you can have when you're funded. The experience that you'll usually have with a psychologist is very professional. There's lots of forms and documentation that's incorporated into it as well, like consent forms and privacy and confidentiality and all of that sort of jazz. A client experience of a coach is different. As a client, you have so much more access to your coach than you do with a psychologist. With a coach, you can usually call them when you like, you can usually contact them on Messenger, you can have contact with them on Facebook, you can have contact with them outside in the real world, you can have contact with them in person or online. It really doesn't matter. It's whatever works best for the both of you usually. The coaching experience is really geared around keeping you motivated and keeping you on track to achieve whatever goal it is that you're wanting to achieve, whether it's a goal in business or a goal for health or a goal in life or a relationship goal or something. So there's a lot of encouragement that you'll receive, a lot of motivation that you'll receive. You get a lot of love from your coach. You feel like you're their only client a lot of the time. And you can feel like that with psychologists too, but it's just a different experience with a coach. They're not medicalising anything. You're not coming away from there feeling like there's something wrong with you that you really need serious treatment for. It's not about diagnosing you. They're not assessing your health or anything like that unless you're seeing a coach that's a health coach, and in which case that's what you signed up for. But what else? They give you ongoing feedback, like regular feedback, which is fantastic. It's just a completely different experience. Most coaches work to packages, so you don't get funded for a coach. There's no restriction around how the coach can work with you. The coach can work with you in the way that they feel comfortable. So there's a lot more freedom and flexibility in that. They don't have to give you evidence-based techniques that might not work for you, or that are too structured or that are too rigid. They can apply whatever is going to work for you at that time. And so now to look at a bit of a comparison just quickly between the practitioner experience as a psychologist, working as a psychologist, and the practitioner experience working as a coach. The experience of working as a psychologist is, it varies from psychologist to psychologist, but there are frameworks, there are structures, it's very regimented, it's very prescriptive. As I said, if your clients are coming to you, you have to work within the parameters of the funding requirements. There's all sorts of things that you need to be mindful of. It's hugely expensive to study psychology in Australia, and even when you do, it doesn't guarantee work. There's a lot of legislation around being a psychologist as well, that can be very restrictive and can, in some ways, although it's set up to protect clients, look after clients, sometimes it can be almost an impediment to forming a therapeutic alliance. When you have to deliver an intervention in a very structured, regimented way, as it is with, say, some evidence-based approaches like CBT, it can leave very little room for, hey Lisa, can leave very little room for you to, I guess, move beyond that scope and work with the client in a way that might suit them a little bit better if they're being funded, you know. There's all sorts of different things. It's really about treating. You're focused on outcomes for mental health, and that's biological, social, emotional, occupational, educational. So that falls under the umbrella of mental health. There's pre and post testing that's done. It's quite a scientific model now. And, you know, working in psychology can be different to what you thought it was going to be when you were doing the study. The experience as a practitioner coach, so working as a coach, how does that feel compared to working as a psychologist? Well, there's a lot more freedom when you're working as a coach. You don't have to use evidence-based techniques. You're not medicalising anything. You're not treating. You're not diagnosing. It's just a very different experience. The client's coming to you because they want to. They're not being told that they have to come or that they're required to come in order to satisfy some other funding body's requirements like WorkCover or WorkSafe or TAC or NDIS or the justice system. So they're rocking up because they want your help to change something. And as a coach, what I love about coaching is that it gives me so much more freedom. I can do appointments online after hours. in person, face to face. I can have a nice relationship with the person that I'm working with. I don't have to be formal all the time. I'm not restricted in terms of what we discuss or don't discuss. I can use testimonials from coaching clients. I can't do that as a psychologist. I can share the screen on a Facebook live stream with a coaching client, but I can't do that with a psychology client. I can share success stories with coaching clients. I can't do that really with psychology clients unless there's a whole lot of de-identification that goes into that process. I'm more available and I can be more responsive to my coaching clients as a coach compared to as a psychologist. As a psychologist, I know that I've got to see them for 50 minutes and they've got to book in an appointment, and there are times when we've got 6-week waiting lists or longer, and so it can be really hard. But with coaching, they can talk to me as often as they want. With coaching, I can talk to them on Messenger. We can do a lot of the work over Messenger. We can send our files to each other. We can have coaching sessions, texting over Messenger or face-to-face over Messenger, which I can't do as a psychologist due to all sorts of restrictions that we have. So, you know, I think I've got mixed thoughts. I think if you're really focused on treating mental health, then psychology is probably what you want to be doing. But bear in mind that it is prescriptive. There are funding implications. The type of client that you work with is very different to a coaching client. The way that you work with them is very different to how you work with a coaching client. I'm leaning more towards a coaching at the moment, and so, you know, for me, I just love the freedom and the flexibility where I can just be myself and I don't have to worry, and I'm not treating anybody and I'm not medicalising, and people aren't going away thinking that there's something wrong with them. They're going away hopefully feeling uplifted and like there's hope and like they've got a strategy or a plan or something like that. So that's kind of just my experience and my little overview of the difference that you might experience as a client seeing a psychologist and a coach against being a practitioner who's a psychologist, working in that field, against being a practitioner who's working as a coach. But it can be a bit complex, so I think I might put it all together nicely in a summary or some kind of document and post it on here so you can have a look for yourself, because coaching is becoming more popular lately as well. But anyway, if you've got any questions about coaching or working as a coach or working as a psychologist, I'm absolutely happy to answer them, as you know. So just do what you always do and send a comment or send a private message, and I'd be happy to help you from there. If, on the other hand, you're looking for a psychologist or a coach, I'm happy to help link you in with somebody as well. So again, just get in touch. All right. If you're not following me on Instagram as well, by the way, do feel free to. For my manifesting work, it's just at brooklyn.storm, and for the practice, it's at All Psyched Up. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.